And welcome back once again to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I am host Sean Meyers, joined by Justin Lowery. Justin, we are on the Fastlane to WrestleMania, as the company likes to say. It is the final pay-per-view this weekend before WrestleMania. And before we get into our match-by-match predictions and sort of breaking down the card, I think you and I both gave an A plus, or at least an A, to WWE over the prior couple of weeks. I thought this week there was some really head-scratching developments, and overall I'm more frustrated than anything, knowing that we're getting closer to WrestleMania, that they still seemingly have no clue how to get to their final destinations. Even if the final destinations are the correct one, the path there has just been baffling to me at times.
I'd call it typical. I don't expect them to go long stretches with good product. I think we got about 2 good weeks. So I guess they were probably due for a clunker.
You and I have both been watching since what, like the very early 90s?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
I know it was a little different when we were younger, and of course the internet wasn't there. There wasn't constant immediate criticism from the entire wrestling community online. But do you think, I'm sure there were some exceptions. We all know, like WrestleMania 13, for instance, was kind of a mess, how that came about. But I don't think that this really happened as much back in the day, did it? How has this company gone to such a disorganized manner, even building up to an event in WrestleMania they should have basically planned out months in advance?
Yeah, well, I'm sure if the internet and Twitter and stuff existed back in WrestleMania 8, people would have been complaining that it's not Hogan and Flair. I'm sure at WrestleMania 9, people would have lost their, flipping minds over WrestleMania 9.
Yeah, the guy not even booked in the match leaves as the champion.
Right,
I understand.
Right.
That's a good point.
I'm sure, there's other, there's other, things, but it seems like one week they have a clear picture and the next week they, do something completely different. It goes with their booking. I think it's pretty much week to week. They know, I think, where they want to, of course, end up at WrestleMania, but they have no idea how they're going to get there. And they just decide on a week-to-week basis, probably at the last minute, and it doesn't always work.
You and I have talked about the logic or lack thereof. Everyone over the age of, 8 years old understands what wrestling is. It's a show, okay? That being said, you get a little bit more into it, and the same goes for movies. If there's just constant flaws in logic in a movie, it takes away. It really takes away. And you and I actually saw Paige's movie. I thought it was pretty good, but the shortcomings in logic at times is like, oh, I know that's not how it should work. When I watch Raw and SmackDown, and I see what they're doing, in particular with Becky Lynch, Charlotte, and Ronda Rousey, and the just completely cluttered lack of logic, it drives me insane to the point where I'm not going to truly appreciate this feud, even if it results in the greatest women's match ever at WrestleMania, just because I'm always going to think of this horrible build-up to it that's unnecessarily overbooked.
They started overbooking this feud months ago. I don't know if they know. I think they feel like Becky is not big enough. They need to add all this extra stuff, and they're wrong.
They did that with Daniel Bryan. I thought it worked a lot better with Daniel Bryan, but remember, that was supposed to be Randy Orton Batista, and then they had to sort of work Daniel Bryan in, and they did the whole thing where he was in the ring and saying, I'm not going anywhere, we're going to get all the fans, so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, this time it was supposed to be her and Ronda. They actually pushed her out, and now they're trying to work her back in, which is complete opposite. I've been on here many times saying I wanted Becky and Ronda just one-on-one. It didn't need Charlotte. But okay, you're going to add Charlotte. It's not like Charlotte's undeserving. She can still put on a great match. But just the storyline. Now Ronda's a heel, and Ronda has some very bad promos. And this is the whole thing is just a mess to me. The whole crutch. Every time she comes out with the crutch, it makes me think of Tiny Tim. And I'm just waiting for some porridge. It makes no sense. The whole thing's just a wreck to me.
Okay, so just entertain me here, Justin. Go with me trying to sort of explain, because I tweeted out earlier this week. Imagine someone who hasn't watched weekly programming, but they did watch the Royal Rumble, and they're going to watch WrestleMania. How would you explain to them what they missed over the past couple of months in this storyline, because there's no way they would be able to follow it. I mean, it changes every week, and there's nothing that makes sense. So it starts with Survivor Series, really. Let's go back to that point. At Survivor Series, it was supposed to be Ronda and Becky, and you and I think, both agree at that point it was going to be Charlotte and Ronda at WrestleMania. That was Becky's chance at the Survivor Series, champion versus champion. Probably would have been the end of it, I think. Or, if nothing else, maybe they would have teased, not giving a clean finisher that they could potentially set it up. But I think at that point, it was supposed to be Charlotte and Ronda at WrestleMania. Becky gets removed courtesy of Nia Jax injuring her. Seemed like the best scenario for those who are in Becky Lynch's corner, that she would finally get that chance at WrestleMania. So they do Charlotte and Ronda instead. Good match, but they don't give the clean ending. When I saw that ending, I thought maybe they will do a triple threat at Mania. That seems like the most likely destination, since we didn't have a clear outcome in that match. And then the next month, it was very clear when Ronda cost Charlotte and Becky in the TLC, making Asuka the champion, which, that's a different story. Asuka really just kind of thrown in there, hadn't been built up. Now she's your champion. So we go from Becky and Charlotte going for the SmackDown championship to a month later, them both wanting the Raw championship, even though they're both on SmackDown. I think the first mistake you have is Becky faces Asuka and loses, but then re-enters the Royal Rumble illegally and wins. It seems like, really, looking back on that was sort of unnecessary, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole thing. I have no words for this, because I feel like I think we've talked about this so much. It's illogical, but Vince doesn't believe he needs logic. We'll just buy, whatever he's selling. The
way that it's set up right now, knowing what we're going to see this Sunday, it would make more sense had Charlotte won the Rumble, right?
I would think so, yeah, I believe that.
Because Becky's the one who has to earn her spot in. Charlotte's already guaranteed this WrestleMania match. That makes the Royal Rumble victory irrelevant, making the entire event.
They not forget that Becky won the Royal Rumble? She won, so she gets the match. Why would she have to earn her way back in? It makes no sense whatsoever. And then they suspend her for like 3 weeks just to have Stephanie go, no, you're unsuspended. Well, why wouldn't they do that to begin with? And what was the point of Vince McMahon suspending? None of this makes any sense.
Yes, exactly. So Vince suspends her because she can't, play within the rules, so on and so forth. So they take her out of this WrestleMania main event picture. They put Charlotte in. Again, you're putting Charlotte, who did not win the Royal Rumble and did not defeat Becky Lynch, in there just because Vince says she's worthy. She's on SmackDown, so that already is diminishing what SmackDown's championship means, because you have the top two women on SmackDown both going to this other brand. Now all of a sudden they're allowed to go on both shows each and every week without any explanation as to why. Then Ronda, just a week ago, plays the face, saying Becky needs to be in this match. She deserves it. Basically, for, is what we could tell, lays down and forfeits the championship, even though she did not explicitly say she was forfeiting it, and said, Stephanie, Vince, do the right thing, get Becky in this match. That was where we left off a week ago. When Monday night started, Stephanie says Charlotte and Becky face each other for the Raw Women's Championship this Sunday, keeping in mind they're both SmackDown superstars, all right? That's already a guaranteed WrestleMania main event spot for Charlotte somehow. So if that match were to happen, we weren't going to have a WrestleMania women's match then, correct? If we're following the logic.
Yes.
Okay. So then they wait until, 10:50 for Ronda to come out and say, oh, I didn't give it up. I changed my mind, making her look stupid, basically. Then she goes heel, turns on Becky Lynch, and to a lesser extent attacks Charlotte. So Ronda Rousey is now a heel. Becky Lynch is the face. So the entire idea of needing Charlotte as the heel all along is now out the window. And they tease Becky and Ronda, knowing that Becky still has to win this match this Sunday. It just seems like, I'm describing it, and I can't even follow my own logic here. Nothing about this makes sense. They have already established what the main event for WrestleMania is going to be. They already have an unnecessary combatant in it, in Charlotte. And this match this Sunday now seemingly has no purpose because we know, obviously, they're going full force ahead with Becky and Ronda as the primary focus.
I'm waiting for some screwy freaking finish of this match, just to prolong this nonsense before we finally get the actual match announced. I mean, you're right. None of this makes sense. Like, none of it. None of it whatsoever. I don't understand what they're trying to do. And to the point, like, me and you talked about, they're going to play up the knee injury, which is going to take away from any match Becky's in because they're going to focus on the knee, so it's going to be more about psychology than an actual, like, entertaining match. The whole thing has just been ruined for me.
And by the way, that knee injury, they sort of, like, missed that spot of how that was supposed to even happen, right? I mean, no one really saw, like, anything devastating that should have led to a severe knee injury for her.
Actually, if I believe month and a half ago, 2 months ago when this started, originally when she hurt the knee, it was the other knee. Then the next week on SmackDown, she shows up holding, favoring the wrong knee. So it's been butchered, since the beginning. Honestly, this feud and the turns and laying down the belt, if I didn't know any better, Vince Russo would be booking this feud. This reeks of what he would do in the old Attitude Era and WCW. And you took a very good thing you had going, a simple thing, and you mashed it up and you're turning it into crap for no good reason.
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let me give you a scenario that would have worked, Justin. Becky wins the Royal Rumble, but maybe they go with the injury angle then, and they say if she needs to be replaced, we need to find a replacement. Okay, Charlotte wins some sort of match, and then she's in, but then Becky gets cleared. I don't like the idea that they even need the injury angle, but that makes sense because then all of a sudden you have a replacement who earns her spot in Charlotte. Becky, her status is in question, but then she shows her resiliency, fights through it, and makes herself available. Then you have a match. The other thing I would have done, the most logical and simplest thing, would have had them split winning the Royal Rumble. Have them both, go out at the same time, something like that, where that's a built-in, well, they both get to challenge Ronda Rousey. You don't have to deal about all the suspension, so on and so forth. Or the last thing, if you really wanted to, you could say that Becky sort of illegally entered because she wasn't a participant. She took someone else's spot. So then you say, well, we can't undo that decision, but Charlotte is really the person who should have won since she was the last of the legal participants. Triple threat right there. Those are very simple things that could have avoided this two months of nonsense where you're going with all these different angles that don't make any sense. And now the Ronda thing, it seems like they just threw this together this week, right? I mean, based basically on what they said on Twitter.
Yeah, well, I guess, too, like, as Ronda's been with the company longer and longer, especially during the Becky feud, she's been getting more and more boos. So, I don't know.
Where do you think it all started for her, like, kind of going downhill in the fans' eyes?
I think the rise of Becky, maybe, around SummerSlam? September?
So,
maybe, is that... I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
There's not one particular thing. One thing that sort of stands out to me is Evolution, how Ronda and Nikki Bella, at least in the company's eyes, was the main event. And that overshadowed Becky and Charlotte, which was, we both said, the match of the year. That's a way, really? Ronda and Nikki Bella is bigger than Becky and Charlotte? Come on now. I don't want to deal with that. The other thing you said is, I think it was when Becky started to rise, but because they went at it on Twitter all the time, and Becky always made Ronda look stupid.
Well, I will say, I don't know what they say on Twitter is scripted, or they let those girls just go off and do what they want to do, but Becky owns Ronda all the time. Ronda's comebacks are extremely lame. She's not very good at it, and I don't know. It's pretty bad. I forget the last tweet. Even Charlotte tweeted back at Ronda, like, what are you even talking about? It's like, what are you doing?
So, I think that, and it's to the point now where I think they sort of had to turn Ronda heel because she wasn't going to get any sort of a face reaction against either Charlotte or Becky. But the whole thing is you put Charlotte in there to sort of protect this reaction to Ronda. So,
that's not... I did follow her career in the UFC. for everybody, who loved her, there was also people that hated her and couldn't wait for her to get her butt kicked. And when she did, she didn't handle it very well.
Right. Now, she lost her last 2 matches before coming to WWE.
A lot of people found a lot of happiness in that, and she was a very sore loser, too. She didn't, do herself any favors, and I think people maybe were initially excited to see her in the WWE. The only thing that always bugged me right off the bat with her is she came out and she was always smiling, walking down the ring and smiling. I just didn't think that fit the character she should have been portraying, but that's just my personal opinion.
Well, even more than smiling, you brought up the point with her and Sasha where she was like, oh, don't be mad at me. I get, you could come out, you could put on that happy face and then go nuts when it's starting, a match or whatever. But, she was just, pathetic in that feud. And that sort of, I think, was really the final turning point because fans were so behind Sasha, who wasn't even really featured, that it was Ronda really is not going to work as a face champion going forward. And we all knew what the reaction was going to be at WrestleMania. I think that the company finally realized it this past week.
Right, I agree.
So that was the biggest takeaway. And again, it bled over to SmackDown. We'll talk about the match that's going to come at Fastlane as a result. But something else on Raw that I think you and I are on the same page we weren't particularly fond of was the official reunion of the Shield. And I think it makes sense why they're doing it. I don't blame them for how they're going about this just because of how everything worked out with the timing aspect of it. But I think that this is overdone, and it just sort of seems like a money grab to, get one last opportunity to get the Shield together before these guys do separate things. It also seems a little lazy, in my estimation, because we know Seth Rollins is going to be challenging for the Universal title at Mania. They didn't really have much for him until then because Brock Lesnar's not around. And with Roman, it sort of seems like they didn't know exactly what to do once he came back. Dean Ambrose has just been sort of more comic relief, and putting over guys than anything since the news came out that he was leaving the company. But it now seems like maybe he isn't leaving the company. So what is the long-term outlook? What are we going to get from particularly Roman and Dean at WrestleMania and beyond?
Yeah, well, I was never in full belief that Dean was going to be leaving. I've never seen a company announce somebody was leaving months before he actually left. That's what made me suspicious.
Rennie's explanation was, at the time, Dean probably legitimately said, I'm interested in moving on. They put it out there knowing that if he did leave, they at least announced it, ahead of time. But I think they always had in mind they were going to try to do whatever they could to keep him around and also play off the fact that he was leaving to draw some more eyes to their product and make his storyline seem a little bit more, unpredictable.
I guess. I mean, the only thing that kind of makes me believe he is leaving is, like you said, he has no direction and he's been losing a lot of matches, which if you're leaving, why would they give you a direction? You're
right.
Going to go put over guys over before you're on your way out.
Yeah, he lost to Elias on Raw.
Right. Thank you. We'll see you later. I crack up the Shield one more time. Remember, they were together right before, Roman, cancer diagnosis came out. They were still the Shield, and they were building towards, Dean turning, on them before he turned on Seth after the thing. And so they were already together. We've seen how many different reunions? 2 or 3 different reunions? And we've seen Rollins turn on him. We've seen Dean turn on Rollins. The only one left to turn is Roman. I mean, we've seen the betrayals. We've seen them get back together. And, for me, too much back and forth, I'm over it. I'm not, I don't scream for the Shield. I don't scream to see the Undertaker wrestle again.
I think the Shield reunion could have been massive if they did it the right way all along. I thought the first time they reunited them, it was a little bit premature. Yeah. Could have waited another year or 2 years. But to your point, it's almost like DX in its, final run. It's just it's not going to be as good as what it used to be. And particularly with these guys who I would say are still in their prime, it seems like you're wasting opportunities to make 3 massive stars where you kind of just put together one group.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dean Ambrose is never going to be a star. I've never been a big fan of Dean Ambrose. He does nothing for me. I know there's people like, oh, he needs to jump to, All Elite Wrestling. I don't want to see him there. I don't want to see him anywhere. I just don't.
Could you see Dean Ambrose with a little bit edgier of a character, maybe being a bigger star?
Maybe. I do think, them being PG holds his character back a little bit. That's for sure. But he does nothing for me. Seth is what Seth is. Great worker. He's popular, but he's never going to be that guy. Roman has the charisma to be that guy, but they book him like they booked him horribly throughout the fans, and that's why the fans reacted the way they did with him.
And when you say book horribly, it's kind of ironic because they book him too strong. They book him too powerful.
Nobody wants to see somebody. That's what John Cena's promo was.
Like Hulk Hogan wouldn't work in 2019.
Well, no. Like people don't want to see that today. People fall down. Like we don't want to see someone consistently get over everybody. Oh look, it's a 1-on-3 match. Oh, you still win. You overcome the odds week in and week out. Like that gets a little bit annoying. You don't need that every single. Your top face doesn't always have to go through all this adversity. What's wrong with just having a top heel versus the top face? Go at it.
And I like rotating different guys into the main event picture as opposed to keeping the same guy there.
They say there's a star problem. Well, like, okay, if you have just built your company around one person and they get sick or they get hurt, that's when you run into problems because you have nobody else that the fans buy because you elevate one person and push everybody else down because of that. It's not a good look for the company.
So two guys that will be meeting at WrestleMania past their prime, former stars in their heyday, if you will, are Triple H and Batista. And we saw Ronda Rousey try to, blur the lines of reality versus storyline on Raw after what she and Becky went through on Twitter. Triple H tried to do the same thing. He cut, I thought, a really good promo, and that's not surprising because Triple H is just a true professional when it comes to promos. He went at Batista, and, he was bringing real names into it. He brought up Ric Flair's real name and said how, what Ric Flair as a person means to Triple H, not as a wrestler, so on and so forth. And then he started, he threw some shade at Batista, heel 101, basically talking about that. I thought it was really good. That said, trying to make things real, it only works in special occasions. And if they're doing it with Ronda and Becky, why do it with Triple H and Batista? That said, I thought Triple H did a good enough job selling that match to the mass audience, and I think people sort of are into that match because it's a good opportunity to see Batista come back. And Triple H, I think, always deserves a decent WrestleMania match. You just don't want him taking away the spotlight from younger guys. I don't think he's necessarily doing that in this feud.
Well, no. Batista's going to wrestle this one match and probably be gone again.
You think so?
Yeah, because I think he has to film a movie, too. I think this is a legit one-off, this for WrestleMania, which you can complain that it takes away a match that maybe people that are actually on the roster can use, talking about building stars. But then again, at least he's not wrestling somebody, and taking away, over the years he's done Sting. He tends now to do, legend matches than actual, but I wouldn't mind seeing Triple H against somebody younger and putting him over. I think Triple H now realizes that's he's willing to do that. Where 5-6 years ago he was still Triple H, the guy who likes to bury people. To me, it's kind of rushed. Like all of a sudden, you have like 6 weeks to Mania. Dave Batista just shows up on an episode, dragging Ric Flair out. You didn't really understand why. Like, do I have your attention now? Were you trying to get his attention before? I did not know this. Like another thing, like
Triple H made like a real quick reference to like, oh, I'm sure people know if they followed along or whatever. But you said you don't think a lot of people do know. Batista has lobbied to come back, and he's always in interviews saying, "Oh, I'm ready to go." If they make the call, they haven't made the call. That's sort of what I think that this storyline is being based on. But that's probably, to my dad who watches wrestling, he's not going to realize that. He only sees what they present on TV each week.
Right. And then how about, the younger generation, maybe 10 or younger, that kind of remember Batista from a couple years ago, and then they just look on the TV, hey, that's the Avenger. Hey, what's he doing there? And why is he a bad guy? No, I like him. He saves the world. It could be very confusing.
Right. Nonetheless, Triple H did what he did. We'll likely see Batista this upcoming Monday in Pittsburgh, by the way, where I will be in attendance. Let's jump over to SmackDown real quick. SmackDown was not as noteworthy in my estimation, but one thing that was a bright spot, new U.S. champion Samoa Joe, an opportunity maybe to make this belt a little bit more significant. Samoa Joe, believe it or not, this is the first time that he's won a championship on the main roster. I would have liked to have maybe seen him win one earlier, or maybe, win the WWE championship. He had the opportunity. Didn't happen. Now he's the U.S. champion. It's good that it's not on, the comedy act in R-Truth. What did you make of how this played out, and what's going to be the future for Joe? Because it looks like maybe he and Cena could be a potential recipe for success.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's basically leading up to Samoa Joe versus John Cena at WrestleMania for the U.S. title. I think that's why they've kept bringing John Cena's name up, in the discussion the last couple of weeks. They're name dropping him because he's going to come back. I don't know if there'll be an open challenge. Usually heels don't do the open challenge. I think maybe the week or two before WrestleMania, Cena shows up, challenges Samoa Joe, he accepts, blah blah blah. Then there's your match. Do you like that? Do
you like that idea for a match at Mania?
I guess. I mean, Samoa Joe wasn't doing anything else.
Right.
They want to give Cena a match. Apparently it was supposed to be Lars.
I always thought Drew McIntyre would maybe be the alternate choice.
Yeah, but they, at least it gives some credence to the title. You have Samoa Joe and Cena on WrestleMania, for it.
And if you go back like 5-8 years, that's a match people would have dreamed of. And now it doesn't have the same effect now, but it's still big.
Right, but I would expect Samoa Joe goes over and maybe gets a little bit of a rub. I don't think he needs much of a rub. I mean, he's Samoa Joe. I think most people, realize. I do think the last couple months he's been hurt a little bit since the AJ Styles feud, especially not winning that feud and everything he's done since. I did see someone post on Twitter, it was a joke. Oh, since he, Samoa Joe won the U.S. title now, does that mean he's going to even be featured less on the show?
Nah.
I got a little chuckle out of that.
So the big story on SmackDown for weeks now has been Kofi Kingston. And you and I talked about, man, that really sucks for Mustafa Ali. That was his spot. And it was sort of taken away because of injury. And not a serious injury, because he only really missed about a month's time. Mustafa Ali made his return on SmackDown. He helped out Kevin Owens against Daniel Bryan and what's the new nickname that they have for Rowan? The Redwood or something? Whatever. It's not Big Red anymore, but Eric Rowan, I think they called him the Redwood a couple times. So Mustafa Ali comes and evens the odds because Kofi Kingston with the New Day was out of the country. Mustafa Ali is back. What are they building towards? And I ask, what are they building towards? You and I both probably know they're not necessarily even aware of what they're building towards. They're just going to figure it out each and every week. But do you really see a path for this to go down? Because what's Ali going to do? He's not going to get involved with Daniel Bryan at this point, I don't think, right?
Okay, I see two scenarios at WrestleMania. Bryan versus Kofi one-on-one. Or Bryan versus Kofi versus Mustafa Ali versus Kevin Owens. Somehow it turns into a four-way for the title at WrestleMania.
What would your reaction be if that happens?
There's no set direction again for what you would think is supposed to be their most prestigious title. I mean, this is their title, and yet going in a month now until WrestleMania, there's really no clear picture there for that title. Other than I think Daniel Bryan's going to walk in WrestleMania as a champion. I think they're debating back and forth on what to do with it. I think. No,
the rumor was it was going to be Kevin Owens against Daniel Bryan, and then they sort of sped that up to get Kofi in there.
I think because the crowd getting behind Kofi very strongly, they noticed that, and if they want Kevin Owens to be a face, having him come back to face Bryan at WrestleMania instead of Kofi is not going to help him in that department.
But he's hitting a stunner now, Justin. Fans love the stunner.
He's just the average guy, man. He's like you and me, man. He's hanging out in bowling alleys. He got kids. I got a kid. I can put on an extra 25 pounds. I grow my beard. I'll look like Kevin Owens.
I'm behind it. So here's my thing. If they do a fatal four-way, then they probably could have just done Kofi and Daniel Bryan now. I believe that they put off that because they're saving that one-on-one for WrestleMania.
I believe that's going to be the choice, but I think this could also be another choice.
What about Kevin Owens turning on Mustafa Ali?
Well, then what the hell is all those promos for leading up to his return?
I think he was going to be a face going back to Raw, and
they changed up.
Or maybe he was supposed to go to SmackDown to go against Bryan at Mania, but Kofi's sort of taken that role, that they did not have Kofi seemingly in that picture whatsoever.
Like Owens versus Mustafa Ali at WrestleMania?
Right. I don't know. And I mean, that would be a good match, but it seems like what's the reason behind it, you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's none.
There was no reason why Mandy Rose should be squashing anyone, let alone Naomi. She did just that on SmackDown. Here's what I'll say. I like Mandy Rose because I think she brings a lot to the table. I don't like her as an in-ring competitor at this point, but she's not like Eva Marie. She can work. Like, it's not terrible. I'm okay with her challenging Asuka at a Fastlane. Now, if it were WrestleMania, it'd be a different story. But why does she have to pin Asuka and then squash Naomi? It's not the proper way to build someone up. You have to build them up by giving them, like, legitimate, believable, you know, like, knocking off Naomi maybe in, like, an 8-minute match where she gets sort of like a crafty type of victory. Having her squash Naomi, it gets her heat, I guess, but, man, that's long-term, it's going to really make Naomi not a credible challenger in the future.
They didn't even build her up, you know, like you said, build her up. You got to do it slowly. They're trying to do it too quick. So they're doing this to make her seem like a threat to Asuka, because everybody and their mother knows she has no chance of actually beating Asuka for the title. So they're trying to do it to make it seem like there's a chance, but there's no chance.
So let's jump into Fastlane. And before I get the predictions, is there any single match that needed to happen at this pay-per-view that they couldn't have, like, resolved either at Elimination Chamber or just on television? Is there anything that they had to have at this pay-per-view? Because I think it's completely unnecessary.
It's completely unnecessary.
And I know some people say it takes away from the build to WrestleMania. You know, you're throwing all these other things.
Right.
A lot of these matches will have implications for WrestleMania, but some of them are just really unnecessary. And you're building, you know, for instance, an Asuka and a Mandy Rose. Why do they need to have this if Asuka's going to be doing something else at Mania? You don't know. Nonetheless, let's run through some of the bigger matches. We'll give our predictions, but we'll really focus on the bigger ones. Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens. I think it's pretty clear to me Daniel Bryan wins this one. He might not win it cleanly, but he's not losing the title. Now, if they are going to do a Fatal 4-Way, Justin, I could see Kevin Owens winning by DQ, winning by countout, something like that. I also think Kofi Kingston will get involved in this. I'm not exactly sure how, but I see Daniel Bryan retaining the title, so I'll just go with the easiest option, which is he winning this match.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan, I'm going with Daniel Bryan. There's no way he's going to lose the belt going into WrestleMania. I think Kevin Owens will lose, would probably help from Eric Rowan. I don't think he's going to come back and just lose cleanly right away. But, yeah, Bryan's going to win.
So that is the biggest men's match. The women's match that we spent a lot of time on, and I don't want to, get fired up again, but Charlotte and Becky, the stipulation is Becky wins. She makes it a triple threat at Mania. If Charlotte wins, well, Charlotte doesn't really get anything other than a one-on-one match at WrestleMania. So, it seems really obvious what the outcome has to be, doesn't it?
It has to be Becky. I'm going with Becky, but I'm not totally convinced. I can see it's more shenanigans. And in the back of my mind, Charlotte's lost to Becky, 3 times in a row? Are they really going to have Charlotte lose to Becky for a 4th time in a row, and then again at Mania? But then again, Becky has to get in the match.
It's ridiculous.
And cause problems. Is it going to be like a double disqualification? I have no idea what's going to happen. My fear is something stupid and hokey, but I'm going to go with Becky because she's going to get into the match.
And remember, she can barely walk at this point, even though she's been cleared by the medical staff.
She's been cleared for over a month, but she still needs the crutches.
The Shield is back. They team up against the bad guy trio of Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, and Drew McIntyre. McIntyre deserves better. Lashley probably would be better off just him and Leo doing their own thing. Baron Corbin, I guess it's a good spot for him. but that's a stupid trio, isn't it? I mean, really, this is
extremely stupid. It's pointless. It's three guys with no friggin' direction. The Shield in a blowout. End of story. Not much to say. Oh, Superman punch spear. It's coming. There you have it. Shield 100% all the way.
And to me, the biggest thing is, where do they go with Roman afterwards? Will he face one of those bad guys one-on-one? Will he do something with Dean?
Rumor is him and Baron Corbin. That's the rumor.
That sounds really, really awful. But
well,
I guess at least I wouldn't, say that it's overshadowing the matches that have been building. But it seems like you should make Roman's comeback bigger than that. I mean, in years past, a guy suffers a knee injury, he comes back and he's main eventing WrestleMania. Now, a guy overcomes cancer and he's wrestling Baron Corbin at WrestleMania. I mean, it seems like it's.
We've seen Roman and Lashley. Roman and Drew McIntyre would be a pretty decent match.
Oh yeah,
but do you really need Drew losing that?
All right, so the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, it is the Usos, the champions, against Shane and Miz. It seems pretty clear, Justin, that eventually Shane and Miz are going to go at each other, and they're going to square off at WrestleMania. I think it has to happen now. They don't have much more time. Miz's dad's going to be there. It's going to be in Cleveland. It's going to look like it's going to be a feel-good story. All of a sudden, boom, Shane gets taken out by Miz. You have your WrestleMania feud right there. The Usos, the beneficiaries, they retain.
I agree with everything you said. Usos win. You'll probably see the start of the feud that leads to their WrestleMania match between The Miz and Shane McMahon.
So the other matches, let's sort of just run them down quickly. The Raw Tag Team Championship match. Man, this is another one that's just hastily thrown together. The Revival, the champions, who don't look anything like champions over the last couple weeks. Aleister Black and Ricochet, who've been knocking off everyone since they've come up. For some reason, they're still a tag team. I don't know. And then Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, the former champions, who come out there and they just interfere. So they're in the match now. Triple threat. I think the Revival wins. I think the Revival needs to win. That being said, I could clearly see Black and Ricochet winning the title because they're all in on pushing these NXT guys as a tag team.
Yeah, I'm going with the Revival. They just won the titles. And if you really do want these guys to stay happy because they've been, complaining, having them drop the title so soon isn't smart. Do I think Black and Ricochet could win? Yes. But I think since Gable and Roode have been entered in the match, one of those two will take the pinfall.
Right.
So Ricochet and Black don't have to take the pinfall. They still look strong. Revival wins.
We mentioned it a couple minutes ago, Asuka Mandy Rose for the SmackDown Championship. Now, all the question marks have been, what will Asuka do at WrestleMania defending her championship? We don't have a clear answer still. People are speculating Lacey Evans. I think that would be very, very bad. I mean, that's really, one of the worst options in my estimation. Regardless, I think it's pretty clear Asuka's going to go in as the champion. Maybe it'll be against Sonya Deville. Either way, it doesn't matter this weekend as she knocks off Mandy Rose. And I think Mandy will be competitive, and maybe that'll help her, but this whole feud's done nothing but hurt Asuka.
Asuka, she's treading water in SmackDown with no actual opponents to face. They really need to call up some NXT girls. They would be better options than what they have now on the SmackDown roster. Asuka is going to win for sure. Sonya, there's going to be help. Mandy's going to get some help. Naomi's going to run down and even the odds.
How about Naomi and Asuka? But you just have Naomi get squashed. Again, she's not a very viable opponent at this point.
No, there's no one viable. Asuka wins, and I really have no idea what they're going to do. Like you said, I've read the rumors of Lacey Evans. That would be a huge mistake. She has done nothing on the main roster except walk up and down the aisle.
Was she great in NXT?
No.
She wasn't
even featured.
She was
she wasn't
decent, right?
But she wasn't on takeovers. She didn't have a big role. All of a sudden, it's just Vince just sees a girl he likes. Probably finds her very good looking, attractive, and he wants to put her out there because that's what Vince and Kevin Dunn still do.
The women's tag. I was going to say the Raw Women's Tag Team Championships, but it's dual branded. They can do whatever, and maybe they will at WrestleMania crossover. Sasha and Bayley against Tamina and Nia. No one wants to see that team again. Hopefully this is the last we see of them. I think Sasha and Bayley clearly win this match. Again, though, what do they do at WrestleMania? That's another question mark. I think it'll either be the Bellas, the Iconics, which probably not because they're not sold on them yet, or they bring back something like Lita and Trish or something along those lines.
I'm going with, again, like you, Bayley and Sasha. But I'm looking at WrestleMania, maybe like a four-way. A team from Raw, a team from SmackDown, and a team from NXT. Because they have taken the titles and they've appeared on NXT with them. So I can see everybody being represented.
How's like Kairi Sane and Io Shirai or something?
I could see something. Yeah, get those two, which would be very exciting. I mean, you probably would get. I guarantee you, Tamina and Nia Jax again, and then I don't know, maybe the Iconics or somebody. I have no friggin' clue.
Last match, we're on the same page for every match so far, Justin. But Rey Mysterio and Andrade, it's on the pre-show. It's probably going to be amongst the best matches, if not the best match of the night. These guys have been terrific in every role that they've had. I am going with Rey Mysterio because I think they still consider Rey Mysterio a top-tier talent, and they just seem like they want to continue pushing him, and they really have not given Andrade those big victories yet, especially on pay-per-view, so I think that trend continues. Unfortunately, not enough people are going to see this match.
Right, it's on the pre-show. I'm going for Andrade. One, because he has to win. Rey, he doesn't need to win. He's slipping with the crowd. He needs to win. Plus, Andrade is now sleeping with Charlotte, and we've all realized in the WWE, if you're sleeping with the right person who has some stroke, good things happen to you. So, mark my. There we go. There you go. That's why he's getting the big W.
Do you think that this would have been better served being saved till WrestleMania?
I thought this would be a great WrestleMania match, but clearly...
And that's when Andrade going over really would have some impact.
They've already had the matches on SmackDown, so it's already, it's already been done. I mean, that's why I hope he goes over. That's what I want, and because he's sleeping with Charlotte, they gave him the edge for me.
Let's take a look at the match-by-match predictions. So we agree, Daniel Bryan, Becky Lynch, The Shield, Usos, Revival, Asuka, Sasha and Bayley, and then the only match we disagree on, the pre-show match, I go Rey Mysterio, Justin goes Andrade, no longer Cien Almas. Final thoughts on what this pay-per-view needs to show to you, what it needs to accomplish heading into Mania.
It needs to show me nothing. It needs to accomplish nothing because it's.
How about clean, decisive victories, not murky in the water? Is that something that?
Well, yeah, okay. How about the only thing that really I guess matters towards Mania would be the Charlotte Becky match. Give me a decisive victory. Becky wins, and at least for the next couple of weeks, we can just see a storyline without a knee, without a crutch, without any, back and forth.
No suspensions.
Right. Just let the three go back and forth on one another for the next 4 weeks, and then go with the match.
I like it. Fastlane this Sunday. Raw will be in Pittsburgh. I'll be there, and maybe include some goodies from that. Maybe get some pictures or videos as well. And again, Justin, it's my favorite time of the show. I get to promote the 1-year anniversary upcoming. Now, I've already let you in on a secret. Don't reveal it yet, but we're going to have some good things planned. This is week 50, so I guess we'll do it,
52, right? 2 weeks?
Yeah. Do you think week 52 or week 53? What would you go with?
52.
Let's do it. All right, so that'll be in 2 weeks.
All right. Before we go, though, I think we would be pretty stupid if we don't at least real quickly talk about Ciampa. Apparently...
Oh, yeah, it came out today, huh?
Right, came out today a couple hours ago. He's going to have to drop the NXT title. It looks like he's going to be out at least 6 months and maybe more, depending on how bad it is.
And that's the neck injury you alluded to last week.
Sounds like it's a pretty bad neck injury. The same type of injury that Paige and other wrestlers have suffered that has almost ended careers. He's been riding high. He's been awesome since he came back from a very nasty knee injury.
I think he had both knees, if I'm correct.
And now he looks like he's having, a severe neck injury. It almost sounds like his time as a prominent wrestler in the company might be coming to an end because of injuries. It sucks. I was enjoying his run. Is
this a result? And I know every person's different, but he wrestled some insane matches in his NXT career where you're like, oh my God, how is this guy still walking?
I don't think it's just what he did in NXT. I think it's just years of abuse on one's body.
Right, because he's in his mid-30s. I understand that. But
it's caught up to him.
But what him and Johnny did in their matches, I mean, that takes a toll.
Yes, it does. Ask Daniel Bryan about the diving headbutts. I mean, this stuff's not easy. This takes a toll on the body, and unfortunately for him, it looks like he's running into some trouble. It sucks. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the NXT title here coming.
And with Johnny Gargano, who's technically on the main roster.
Right. So I at least there's some intrigue with that. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks what they do with that. But I just wanted to say it really sucks for a guy who I really enjoyed, and hopefully he gets well soon.
All right. So best wishes to the Blackheart, the NXT champion, at least for now. Once again, you can follow us 5-Star Pod Wrestle on Twitter. You can check out our YouTube channel, subscribe to it, like the videos. And again, in 2 weeks, courtesy of Justin Lowery's decision, we will have our 1-year anniversary. We'll have all sorts of goodies for that show. That's upcoming. We'll catch you again next week as we continue here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.